Number 10. Scott Cawthon. One of the biggest theories that I think most people are still hoping for, even given the controversy that surrounded the game's creator, is that Scott Cawthon himself will appear in the film. At least, hopefully his voice will. Many people have theorized and are hoping that Scott will appear as the phone guy. Some fans have even said that casting anyone else would be a disgrace, a travesty, because Scott honestly just nails it as phone guy and is basically irreplaceable to them. I feel like there are other performers who could also do a good job in that role, but I agree that Scott's portrayal has pretty much become iconic, so not having him in the role if phone guy does appear would be disappointing. I too hope we get to hear that familiar voice in the film. Hello, hello! And friends, before we move on to this next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, and if you love it when we do FNAF content, be sure to let us know by clicking that like button. Number 9. FNAF 1. Some have theorized that the Five Nights at Freddy's film will start at the beginning with the plot of the first game being the focus of this film. The first game had us in the role of the nighttime security guard and confined to one space, the office, where each night began with a phone call from the previous security guard that we're taking over for, the phone guy, who in his last days, likely his literal last days, even alive, recorded messages to help us learn our new role and stay safe. I don't think this one will be quite as literal of an adaptation if we get it, but I could see us getting the plot of a new security guard coming in who starts to notice strange things happening at the pizzeria that end up leading him to make a bloody discovery. However, I'm not sure if this will be Michael or not and what role the kids in the film might play. Will they simply become victims, or will they possibly defy their in-game fate with the new security guard teaming up to help save them? Number 8. Death by Suit. This is one we are all expecting will be headed our way for sure. I mean, considering how this is supposedly the end we are threatened with should we not be diligent enough during our first night shift, I think it's no surprise that people have pondered this might be the way someone goes when it comes to one of the deaths that we're gonna get in this movie. I think most fans are hoping that they will be pretty gruesome deaths. Now, you know, they don't have to be super gory to me really, but they do need to be creative in how they show or don't show but imply deaths in the film. And one of the worst ways to go would be the one simply that phone guy warns us of. How if the animatronics catch you, they might think you're basically an endoskeleton outside of your suit and then try to shove you in one. Which, you know, is a problem because you can't fit in a suit that has all the stuff in it that isn't pulled back, so ugh.
And it's 7. Coffee. In FNAF VR Help Wanted, you can see multiple animatronics, but one of the most interesting is probably the coolest hidden secret animatronic in the series ever, and yeah, there's secret animatronics. Coffee is actually not even an animatronic in the FNAF series. It's from another one of Scott's games, which failed, like every other game before FNAF unfortunately, but at least FNAF was successful. So, you know, he's gonna make references. This one is one of them. The game from which Coffee hails is called Desolate Hope, and in that game Coffee is an autonomous service robot designed to tend to the needs of the nearby humans. It's a sentient coffee machine. That actually makes Coffee. Welcome to Yog Labs. Coffee can be seen in FNAF 3 in VR if you reload the level enough times. He will at some point randomly be sitting on your desk. You can't really interact with him, and he won't actually make you coffee, which sucks because, you know, when I'm freaking out because a 60-year-old dude is trapped in an animatronic coming after me at 2 a.m. You know, I shouldn't need it. Because, you know, it's 12 to 6 a.m. Like, all you need is like a shot of William getting his morning cup of joe in the movie, right? And then just have the coffee maker look like Coffee from Desolate Hope, and we will all be happy. We will cheer. We will actually cheer. And at 6, the 4th child. I proposed this idea that perhaps William and his wife, or baby mama, but most likely wife at this point, had 4 kids instead of 3. The 3 that we see in game. This was mostly based off The Immortal and the Restless, the TV series from Sister Location, where a woman was telling a character most assumed to be a representation of William that he had a son that clearly was his, but he was denying it. And then after looking at the genetics and then trying to explain to the people in my life who don't really understand it and pushing them all away and causing self-isolation, it just shows how likely this scenario was. If the babies came out blonde, William might just have thought that they weren't his. But what if later William realized that the baby was in fact his and wanted it back? Or perhaps I'm wrong about the whole thing. I don't know. At least I wasn't sure until a comment from YouTube user Saber Sapphire on Tiny Details Part 7 actually gave me a little bit of info. I think we can all agree that Ballora is an allegory for Mrs. Afton, alright? William made the robot as a way to cope. And we can also agree that she's supposed to be a mother figure to the mini Renas. And that's what got us all thinking that she was meant to be a mother in the first place, aside from her song. Well, Saber pointed out that the number of mini Renas that Ballora has is 4. Okay, Ballora has 4 children, and if she's meant to represent the mother of the Afton kids, this detail could solidify this theory even more. And maybe that's where Vanessa comes from. Alright? Explore it in the movie. Give me some like Jane the Virgin drama where Afton has a 4th kid. Come on. Halfway through into number 5, Gregory. The main reason I want Gregory in this movie is because the knowledge that this kid has exceeds even some of my own. The kid is the size of a 4-year-old, can fit inside of Glamrock Freddy's cake cavity. He can fit inside baby strollers and other various small areas around the Pizzaplex. He's too small to drive one of the go-karts alone, but he knows how to restart generators, operate a trash compactor, start and drive a van, as well as identify a car battery, connect the jumper cables to that car battery properly, and then use those to fix Freddy's whole recharging every hour issue in one of the endings. So how the living hell does that character as a whole make any sense? And how do Freddy and Gregory make it to the hill without needing to recharge in that ending? Like, how do they solve that issue? I don't know, man. This kid knows more words than I do, but somehow is the size of a 3.5-year-old, maybe 4. No, okay? It makes absolutely no sense, and this kid's weird superpower is the reason Security Breach is so confusing. It would really only make sense if he is a robot that's supposed to mimic a toddler, but who's actually been on for decades and has been learning the entire time. So, if that is the case, and he's been on for that long, it would be possible for him to appear in the movie. So he f***ing better. It only makes sense. In it for Scooby-Doo. This is purely because I think William Afton making a Scooby-Doo reference would be hilarious. Obviously, I don't think that it's going to happen because it would probably ruin the tone of the movie, but I don't know. Movies or shows referencing an actor's previous work is not an unheard thing. There's entire compilations of series referencing previous movies and shows that their actors starred in or guested in or whatever it be. With shows from the Arrowverse talking about Victor Garber and the Titanic, or Brandon Ruth returning as Superman, but also Supernatural had a whole episode where Jared and Jensen played Sam and Dean in a world where Supernatural was a TV show. So they played their characters playing themselves. So yeah, productions making references to our world's dynamic in their scripts is nothing new. It's like when Bones had Emily and Zooey Deschanel on as like cousins in the show, but then one of the characters is like, oh, you two could be sisters. Okay, come on, okay? And while those may seem like extreme examples, this is a series where a serial killer dies, possesses a hard drive, gets scanned into a VR game, and then is able to possess another person's brain and control them into bringing his body, which is stuck in a robot suit, back from death. So yeah, it's really not that far out of the question to have Afton say zoinks, or to have a dog that's called Scooby like walk up to him and like interact, and then have Afton flip out on the dog to show that he's psycho. Okay, something like that. Just come on, that would be funny. You have to admit. Getting close to the end of number 3, Kelsey. The story The New Kid from 1:35 a.m., the third Fazbear Frights book, revolves around Devin, Mick, and Kelsey. Devin and Mick are outcasts from their class and aren't really all that popular. They aren't cool. They aren't me. Totally kidding, they're definitely me. But when the new kid Kelsey arrives at the school, they make a new friend, or try to. Despite Kelsey being charismatic and adored by everyone, he still decides to hang with these two, which doesn't seem accurate. Over time though, Devin grows jealous of Kelsey, since Kelsey is everything that he wants. So in an act of revenge, or to gain control like some serial killer origin story, Devin hatches a plan to lure Kelsey to an abandoned Freddy Fazbear's and trap him in a springlock suit for a few hours. To like try to humble him, I guess? I don't know. I don't know why they think that you can trap someone in a springlock suit without killing them. But of course, the plan goes horribly wrong. After getting in the springlock suit, It fails, as expected, causing blood to soak into the fur of the animatronic and pool all around the ground because, you know, it's a book and they don't have to worry about game ratings. So Devin and Mick leave Kelsey for dead so they won't get in trouble, but then something doesn't feel right, so for some reason Devin returns to make sure that Kelsey's body is still in there, which is a horrible idea. So he sticks his hand in the animatronic mouth to make sure, I don't know why, and then snap. The spring locks fail again in his hand, not in the mouth because that's not where the spring locks are, and then Devin gets his hand stuck inside and bleeds out. But not before seeing a body in the suit with black hair instead of Kelsey's blonde. So I want this explained in the movie. I do. Cast a Kelsey, for God's sakes. There's no other, these characters don't have names that have appeared anywhere, so just cast a frickin' Kelsey, please, for the love of God. But ultimately, in at number 2, Katniss Everdeen. I also think it would be hilarious for Katniss Everdeen to appear in this movie. Not like as a way to connect the universes, but exclusively because of who is playing Mike. I mean, come on, okay? This guy's IMDb has him listed as being known for Hunger Games movies almost exclusively. Josh Hutcherson would not be where he is if it wasn't for those, and much like the Scooby-Doo or Shaggy reference, I think it would be funny to have like a Katniss thing in here, okay? Even if it's just a joke. Or make Mike really good with a bow and arrow, since like he took up the sport to try to relieve anger because his therapist suggested it or something, and then they're just like, oh, you're a natural Katniss Everdeen, or like, oh, you'd win the Hunger Games. I don't know, I think that would be the funniest shit, alright? Come on, you gotta have a little comedy in something like this. And Scott seems like the kind of guy who would be down for that. He does all sorts of random, unexplained crap in his games. So like a couple of passing references to past work that the actors have done, it wouldn't be out of nowhere. I personally would appreciate a Once Upon a Time Anna reference from the girl playing Vanessa, Elizabeth Lale. Please. And finally, in at number 1, Conspiracy Podcast. While Markiplier seems to be implying that he will be making an appearance in the movie, there are some other YouTubers that, like I said earlier, flat out just said that they were invited to check out the set and watch filming. The 4 that we know of course, being Dawko, as well as 8-Bit Ryan, Rizbowski, and Bazimalum, aka the Theory Thursday crew. From the looks of things, they're just going to vlog on the set and film content for the respective channels. However, there could be something more here, like maybe a cameo or a consultation kind of thing that they wouldn't have revealed for obvious reasons. Although consultation would be far less of like a major thing, but considering how Scott is on set, they wouldn't really need it, but it could also just be like from like a fan's perspective kind of thing so that we can understand the story of the movie and have it not get confused since we don't know everything about the games. I don't know. They could be doing something like that, but they could also be doing exactly what they did on Thursdays as characters in the movie. So, could Theory Thursday actually be a podcast within the FNAF universe? I guess we'll have to wait for the movie to find out. And at 10, Freddy Fazbear's. While we might have already had a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with the delivery service that Virtual Dining Concepts was working on with Scott Cawthon, that was seemingly cancelled or postponed for the time being at least, possibly due to the movie. However, to make up for it, we did get set photos of the Freddy's location for the FNAF movie, or at least one of the Freddy's locations, since there could be more than one. But the one that we've had shots of right now is abandoned in the context of the movie. We originally got pictures of the facade being built, and then we got to see the actual sign and finally the finished set. Apparently people online were upset with the sign, which I can kind of understand, but also don't find fair. Like, yes, FNAF is a huge series that could have had a more elaborate sign. This is basically what the Chuck E. Cheese signs look like, so obviously that's gonna be what they lean towards. Come on guys, okay? It's every fake Freddy's that anyone's ever made for a thumbnail, because it's basically just Chuck E. Cheese. It's also since been taken down since they finished filming with that location. And at 9, Bad Cupcake. The current working title, or as some say the production title of this film, is Bad Cupcake, which is clearly meant to be a reference to Carl the Cupcake, Chica's faithful consumable companion. I say consumable because, well, Carl is a cupcake, and I'm the faithful companion that isn't a food product. Well, unless you buy me dinner first. The title of the movie isn't actually Bad Cupcake, that's just the title they use as a way to protect the movie, so casting calls, booking locations, and all of that is done using the Bad Cupcake moniker. But considering it's the working title, I guess there isn't really going to be much significance with the plot. I don't think that Chica will be a key player in this, despite Susie seemingly already being cast, but it's probably just going to be like for a plot development thing because she's been cast as Ghost Kid number 5. As just like a way to push the story forward and probably pay homage to a character that unfortunately won't be making an appearance, because I doubt that Carl the Cupcake is gonna have like a big twist reveal. And also, if you guys are excited for the FNAF movie, be sure you hit subscribe because we're gonna be talking about it whenever whenever there are 10 things that we can then cover on a list. In a cast. While a whole lot of the cast has been revealed so far, most notably of course being Matthew Lillard as William Afton and Josh Hutcherson as Mike Schmidt, there are at least, well at the time of typing this, 13 total cast members officially on the IMDb, and a 14th that had the film on their resume already. That secret cast member seems to be Jessica Blackmore, who you may know from My Name is Vivian or Monsters of Man. Ironically, played a TV reporter on 5 Days of Memorial, which I find hilarious because it's 5 Days of Memorial, and then now their resume has them listed as Mike's mom. You know, 5 days at Memorial, 5 nights at Freddy's. It's kind of they happened at the same time. The rest of the cast is Elizabeth Lail, Mary Stuart Masterson, Kat Connor Sterling, Josephine Love, Grant Feely, Piper Rubio, Asher Colton Spence, Lucas Grant, Joseph Polquin, Christian Stokes, and David Houston Dottie as of writing the video. I think a couple more have since been revealed, and apparently Mike P. Sullivan is in the movie as well according to his Facebook page. In its 7th FNAF 3. The movie is the first 3 games thing actually didn't really make sense to me until I figured out that like the actual dates of the cars is showing us what the date for the movie is, okay? It's confusing, but let me explain. While there has been no official announcement, we know that the biggest moments in establishing the plot of the games take place in the 80s, with Crying Child, Elizabeth, and Charlotte all biting it in 1983, and in Crying Child's case, quite literally biting it. And then the missing children's incident takes place in 1985, and we can't forget the infamous bite of 87. FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, FNAF 2 in 87, and FNAF 3 would take place this year, 2023, since the description says 30 years after Freddy's closes, which would have had to be the FNAF 1 location in 93. So they already have like 2023 cars on the set, because I mean it's 2023. However, there was a casting call on Central Casting that was asking for cars from the late 70s to early 90s, which makes sense for the time frame of the first 2 games as well as the third, and also establishes those games as taking place within those years. Because I mean, like, come on, it would be kind of weird to have Crying Child being rushed to the hospital in a 2019 Toyota Corolla. Plus, you know, the 93, they have cars from the early 90s, so yeah, there you go. In its 6th, Markiplier. Yep, you heard me right. In a recent interview with Variety, Markiplier was asked about the FNAF movie, and he implied quite heavily that he'd be making an appearance, saying, quote, "Everyone wants to know. There was a lot of confusion. Yeah, I can't say anything particular about that. There was a lot of scheduling conflict, and I can't say anything." Which is his way of saying that he's making at least a cameo, because why else would there be scheduling conflicts if he didn't need to have free time to actually go to the movie set if he wasn't in the movie? Because come on, he wouldn't have had any scheduling conflicts because he wouldn't have to worry about scheduling it with other things. You know what I'm saying? But also, if you're not in something, you don't say I can't say anything, okay? We all knew that Andrew Garfield was appearing in No Way Home, and he was saying that he wasn't. He wasn't saying I can't say anything, because that's just saying I can't say anything is saying something. So yeah, maybe that detail will confirm Markiplier's place within the game lore. Since on November 25th, 2019 at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time, Olympics Official released the official launch trailer for FNAF AR Special Delivery on YouTube. And in the 2-minute long trailer, we see Markiplier being the one advertising the Fazbear Funtime service, which is the service that the game is based off of, because you're ordering animatronics through that service. But yeah, he's already in the game lore, so maybe this will just establish him properly. How about doing a number 5, Secret Panther? No, partner. How about doing a number 5, Secret Partner? Glitchtrap is an odd character, okay? They're supposed to be an accidental addition to FNAF VR, but they somehow are able to interact with the environment and alter aspects of the game. That's not an accident, okay? I've always questioned why Glitchtrap is able to move the curtain in the final scene and then put us in the Freddy suit, but how is he able to do that if he's supposed to be a spirit? Well, he can't, alright? That's not it. And any being must obey the laws of the form they inhabit, or whatever it says in it, chapter 2. So how is he able to move things like a curtain when I can't move them in game? Alright, simple. He wasn't an accident. He was a glitch, but he was intentional. He was meant to be there, obviously. That's why Vanny's working on getting him out, or ends up getting him out, or whatever it is. He was meant to be there, okay? Glitchtrap was an intentional feature of FNAF VR, which makes me think, who else is working for him? Because at this point, Vanny wouldn't have been possessed or under his control. So yeah, I hope they explore that in the FNAF movie, or at least like introduce a character that is clearly meant to be this mysterious third party. In a 4, Hiding Spot. I really hope this movie answers this question properly because I swear to the Dark Lord Cthulhu this should not have been possible. William should in no way have gotten away with putting the missing children's victims in the animatronics like we're led to believe. The smell of rotting bodies would ruin everything. The decomp would speed up because the animatronics are moving around. I don't know how many times I've said this at this point, okay? They're in front of people every single day. People started complaining that they were leaking blood and mucus and that they were smelling like death. There's no way that if William getting away wasn't important to the story, he wouldn't have been caught. Come on. It was also pointed out to me that Foxy has holes in his body, alright? So if there was a kid that was in there, you'd be able to see it. You'd be able to high five little Timmy as you're walking by Foxy and he's putting on a show, but then you're like, wait a second, that's a body. So yes, while originally maybe we were like led to believe that I have to put the bodies in the animatronics, it's basically impossible. So I hope they explain what actually happened in the movie. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, 1985 keypad. The security panel code of 1985 from sister location revealing images of like the FNAF 4 house isn't a new thing. We've known it for ages, but and many are using this to confirm the events of this game taking place in 1985, or actually trying to confirm FNAF 4 taking place in 1985. But this begs the question, where did these rooms come from? If this confirms the events of the game taking place in 1985, why are the houses we play in during the 8-bit and then the main gameplay so different? I mean, it could be an illusion since we know that the animatronics are, because you know it's a brain coma thing. But like, if that was the case, how would the cameras be seeing this? Okay, and if these are 2 different houses, why? What does that mean for the series overall? Like, come on. Hell, where's the parents' bedroom in the 8-bit house, okay? Is it like that locked door? But like, is that the room? And even if it is, where's the plush trap hall? This is one thing that's always bothered me about this game, and I know, okay, like of all things, this is gonna bother me? Yes. Okay, because as far as I'm concerned, FNAF 4 is a video game in their universe, so those cameras can't be legit, unless it was just meant to illustrate that they would be in the same house or something. But ultimately, in number 2, explosive ending. William dies, okay, at the end of Man in Room 1280, not before that. The 3rd story of the 5th Fazbear Frights book, and he does so quite extravagantly, exploding into a pile of mush right before a pastor's eyes. But how is that possible? How could William just explode? It's not something you really think about, but I have quite the explanation because I just want it to happen. William knew about possession, and he knew how it happened. He knew that the agony required to do such a thing was excruciating, because, you know, his daughter got scooped, his son got crunched. So what if he just wanted to ensure that he would suffer extreme agony by injecting or installing some form of explosive device within him that when triggered, if like in the vicinity of like a Fazbear warehouse or something, would just boom, boom, instantly, alright? I mean, it would mean that he couldn't fly anywhere, but he doesn't really need to fly anywhere. He has everything he needs. So yeah, this guy was mental, possibly injecting himself with Remnant, which is molten soul metal, in order to stay alive. So yeah, this isn't out of the question. So if the movies want to get closer to where the games are, with the next 2 movies that Matthew Lillard's contract has actually confirmed, then I don't know, maybe we could get a security breach movie if they do this. So do it. I want to see Shaggy as William Afton explode. And finally, in at number 1, back together. I'll put you back together. That's it. That's the number. I want this explained. Okay? Is Crying Child a robot? Just tell me. Tell me. Please. Alright? Thank you. In at 10, the box. What's in the box? The FNAF 4 box has, like the Bite of 87, been a pain in the ass for all FNAF fans, and those who try to explain things have been struggling for a while to explain what could be inside this infamous box. However, FNAF 6 might have given us an answer that we were looking for with its simple final speech. In Henry's final speech from the true ending of the game, the layout of the FNAF 6 pizzeria is oddly similar to the layout of the FNAF 6 building, and the stories from Candy Cadet talking about 5 things becoming one thing and then getting put in a box makes sense with this as well. 5 animatronics, however you want to count it, Baby, Scrap Baby, Molten Freddy, the puppet, Lefty, or Molten Freddy as most of them, however you want to work it, even if you include your character, 5 things are becoming one fire. Yeah, they all go up in smoke, and that's Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. While William might have escaped, maybe that's what the box is supposed to represent. You know, the box being the reality that William is able to escape all the time. Who knows, really? I don't, but you know what? Hopefully we will after this goddamn movie, because this is one of the biggest mysteries of the series, so it would be nice if you were to explain it. And at 9, the Bite of 87. the survival logbook makes an appearance on yet another list because it still makes me mad to this day. This time, either solidifying or making the Bite of 87 even more confusing. The Bite of 87 being the mysterious incident where someone, presumably Jeremy from FNAF 2, gets his frontal lobe bitten off by an animatronic. We thought that we had the animatronic who did it pinned as Mangle, but then Ultimate Custom Night comes along and then proposed that maybe it was Toy Chica, with the voice line of "Where's my beak?" lodged in your forehead, of course. What the hell else could that mean? However, I think the logbook actually tries to give us more of an answer as to who done did it. On page 35, the book asks you some would you rather questions about if you were trapped under a desk for a week or surrounded by baby-themed animatronics, but the last question it asks you is whether you would rather lose a frontal lobe or an arm. Every other question makes sense, aside from this one, at least in that situation. But if you go to page 87, you see a couple of animatronic cage matches where you're determining the winner and why they would win. On page 86, this happens as well, but both animatronics up for debate are in this section, but Mangle is the only one that we think could have done it that appears on page 87, and they're clearly set up to win because they're being pitted against Balloon Boy. I mean, it's a freaking fox versus a baby. How do you think that's gonna go? Chica is also presented in this section, but she's on page 86 against Freddy, which is a much more fair matchup. Maybe this is Scott trying to correct us from what we thought we learned in Ultimate Custom Night, or maybe it's just another coincidence or a diversion, but it doesn't matter as long as they let us know who did it in the FNAF movie. Please, if you omit this key moment from the series in this movie, I'm going to sue you. Speaking of which, inundate lawsuits. Yeah, I've mentioned these lawsuits quite a bit on another list, but there was good reason for it, okay? Lawsuit number 4 in FNAF 6, well, I mean like number 4 at least if you go by the fandom wiki gallery order, but civil suit number 365422879 has their first complaint as, quote, a young boy suffered severe mental trauma because of the defendant Fazbear Entertainment Inc.'s ice-cold indifference to the health and well-being of the human population, which, I mean, while true, we all know it's true, wouldn't actually be valid on a lawsuit. You can't describe the company as cold-hearted or say that they didn't care about the health and well-being of the human population. That's slander, or libel, depending on how you want to pursue it. But as it would pertain to the facts of the case itself, they have no information as to what is in the brains of others. It's like how you can't use what someone else has said to you as evidence, you know, objection hearsay. But in this case, it doesn't seem like Fazbear actually has fault in this incident. The ground gave way beneath the boy and he got trapped in basically a mini sinkhole, something that would have been near impossible to calculate and actually comes back to bite Fazbear Entertainment in the ass when, you know, the sinkhole happens in security breach. But it's also noted on the suit that Fazbear Entertainment lowered him pizza and party favors while they were waiting for emergency services. Okay, come on, that's doing their part. What are they gonna do? Pull this kid out of a sinkhole? And also, all this kid ended up developing from this was a fear of the dark and a fear of anchovies, both of which I had as a kid, and I'm not suing anyone. So I want to see them explore lawsuits like this in the movie. I want to see William in court. Come on. Put him up against Mike Ross.
Number 7, FNAF 6. I actually really love this theory for the Five Nights at Freddy's film. Pizzeria Simulator I think would be an amazing game to see brought to life because, well, I just think it would be a lot of fun. Think of the tapes that we watch that are in there to train us in how to best run our pizzeria and welcome us in. How much fun would it be to incorporate all that cheesy goodness into the movie? I personally would be super here for that. And then the end of FNAF 6 is completely horrifying with the fire at the pizzeria pretty much engulfing everyone and supposedly freeing all of the souls of those possessed animatronics. Although, it still isn't really clear if this actually worked in terms of the lore, considering that some of those souls seem to perhaps still be lingering around. Anywho, it seems unlikely that this will be the case, considering that many people already think, based on what we've seen, that the film will be more inspired by the first game. But it could be cool to see some of those cheesy elements at least incorporated into the movie. After all, the movies don't have to match the story or even sequence of actions from the games. The story for the films could basically be completely different, but simply inspired by that first game, with influences from any number of the other games woven into it. Number 6, Save saved by the mask. Of course, when it comes to the games, we all want to see that death by suit, but another thing that a lot of fans are theorizing and hoping for in the film is that we will also see someone else, the main survivor likely, dodge this type of death by donning an animatronic head or mask. I personally would love to see this. I think this addition to the second game was super helpful and almost just as terrifying at times as getting jump scared. The anxiety that builds up is palpable when you put on that Freddy head, and even the visuals that you get as you peer out from the two cutout eyes and hope that you acted fast enough to avoid that jump scare, I mean, it really is exhilarating and terrifying all at once. And imagine the perspectives that we could play with in the film, seeing this action both from the inside of the mask and perhaps from the outside as well. Also, there's just something terrifying about a person, not wearing like a full suit but just a mask, well, like dressed normally. It's just odd and off-putting, to be honest to me. I both kind of love it, but I'm also kind of terrified by the prospect of just that visual.
How about doing at number 5, Brave Volunteer? I'm calling it out again because while he might have had issues killing Afton somehow for whatever goddamn reason, Henry just seems fine offing his son when he gets the chance. I mean, in both of the fires that Henry set, FNAF 3 and FNAF 6, Michael was there both times. And sure, Michael might have set the FNAF 3 fire, but if Henry set the FNAF 6 one, it would make sense that he also set the FNAF 3 one. And he also didn't seem to care that Michael was in the building the first time. He also doesn't give Michael the opportunity to exit in FNAF 6, despite there having been a way out plan. Quote from the final speech in Henry's words, "And to you, my brave volunteer, who somehow found this job listing not intended for you. Although there was a way out plan for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling you are right where you want to be." No, I'm not. I want to live. He assumes that we want to die in these halls for whatever reason, and he doesn't give us a chance to actually make the decision for ourselves. He just like forces us to die. It's a crime. But again, he doesn't give us the option, which I would like explained in the movie. Please, explain to me how this isn't just a murder. Just the slightest crumb so I can run with it for 4 more years. And at 4, Domino. During the true ending of Security Breach, or the Afton ending, the Burn Trap ending, whatever you want to call it, how does this happen so perfectly? Like, there's beyond even plot armor levels of luck here, okay? We're basically Domino. It's the very easy to understand monitor setup in the room that we fall into that's connected to the cameras in various rooms that Burn Trap enters, and ironically, he only enters those rooms with buttons that light the fires in the rooms that correspond to the monitor the button is in front of. Think about it. How are these working? It's been a while. It's been a long time. These cameras and old computers are still working for who knows how long after FNAF 6 to Security Breach. It's been through a lot, alright? It's been through the fire that ruined the building. It's fallen into a sinkhole that opened up beneath it. It's had a whole mall, pizzaplex, Chuck E. Cheese fever dream built on top of it. How is all of this working after that? Get this like later in the timeline, but please have like Henry planning out the FNAF 6 location fire thing or something, okay, so I can understand how this was all so well preserved. Getting close to the end of number 3, Security Puppet. Now, this might be a controversial topic, but in my humble opinion, if you're suspicious of your business partner and concerned for your daughter's well-being and even life, you don't just give her a special bracelet that makes her a priority to your one security robot and then leave her alone, alright? Especially when that security bot can be disabled by simply placing a couple of boxes on top of its box. You keep her home as much as you can, or like keep an eye on her. Like, you don't like lock her in the house, but you don't let a 3-year-old run around next to your homicidal partner. And you should be doing that anyway. Like, you should be keeping an eye on her anyway, because, she's 3 years old. You don't give her a bracelet then let her run amongst the big kids at a pizza place where she's locked outside and then killed. No. Okay, how did she even get locked outside? How is that possible? How could that even happen? She can't reach the doorknob, for God's sakes. Neglectful. You're neglectful, okay? Henry puts a green bracelet on his 3-year-old and says, yeah, that's enough, I'm good, and then neglects her, hoping that the green bracelet's going to be enough. Bro, what the hell? Especially when the man that you think is going to hurt her is the one who built the goddamn animatronics in the first place and then knows exactly how to disable them when the time comes. Think things through for once. This is also in the right time frame for the movie as well, so please, explain what Henry was thinking when he just left his daughter alone with a serial after giving a new slap bracelet. But ultimately, in at number 2, Scrap Trap. Also, what happened to Scrap Trap between games to cause such significant changes in his design? Sure, he was burnt in FNAF 3, kind of, but we also see him alive and well in sister location's ending cutscene not damaged or barely damaged, so where did all this additional changes come from? His head gets larger, his feet get larger. I genuinely don't know how that would make any sense. Okay, we know that it's the same person, it's not someone new thanks to Ultimate Custom Night. In a previous video I talked about how FNAF 4 is a game made by Scott Cawthon's in-universe version, and then that would thus mean that any character appearing in Ultimate Custom Night would also be fake. I hope you get what I mean. If you haven't, check out the video, I explain it way better there, I'm not going crazy. It makes me think that Springtrap is probably less than real. He's probably fake. He's faker than Glitchtrap, for of all things. And you know what? It explains the discrepancy between Springtrap to Scraptrap and then Burntrap, and then I just want an explanation in the movie, okay? I'm rambling. Let's move on. And finally, in at number 1, evil programming. Have you ever thought about why these animatronics are attacking you? Like, really? Because, like, sure, it's because we look like William and the animatronics are possessed and they're trying to get revenge or whatever, but if I was possessing something and going after the guy that I thought killed me, I'd get pretty steamed if he kept shutting a door in my face every time I got close to enacting my revenge. But if that kept happening, do you know what I would do? I wouldn't do the same thing, I would change things up. I would go down a different path, I'd break in through the back window. But nobody does that in FNAF 1. Bonnie, Chica, Freddy, they all stick to their same paths every time that they come after us, which makes me think that they aren't doing it because they want revenge, they're doing it because they have to. No, repeated patterns and inability to adapt might work with my brain, but it doesn't work with possessed animatronics. No, it's their programming. They're doing what they're told. They're following the same route every time. That's what code does. Angry spirits possessing robots would be adapting, even if they're kids. They've been possessing them long enough in 1993, so I don't know, maybe to make this a possible point of interest in the movie, please, for God's sakes, I just want all these things explained in the movie.
Number 10, Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex. Mega Pizzaplex. If there is anywhere that I want to go, it's there. In person or in the film. Or in the films, if there are more. I hope there are more. Why is the Mega Pizzaplex awesome? It's massive, it's neon, there'd be so much to see and do, and there is something to fear pretty much around every corner there. Which is what makes it so terrifying while also being so wondrous at the same time. Now, do I think this location will appear in the first film? Honestly, no, probably not. But can I dream that it will? Do I want it to appear? Most certainly I can, and I do, and no one can stop me. I feel like the Pizzaplex is also featured in basically the game that has the most clearly defined plot, which, I mean, yeah, there's still much to be desired there, but at the same time, Security Breach had a more clearly defined narrative and journey than any of the other games in terms of having a protagonist who had a clear name and a clearly defined purpose, that we understood both those things. We didn't have to be like, who is this? Why are they here? What are they doing? What's the real meaning? Sure, Gregory's backstory is a bit of a mystery and nonsensical at this point, but hey, we knew what we were objectively doing and why we were doing it. At least that part mostly made sense. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, and if you love FNAF, guess what? We have tons of FNAF content for you. We have playlists, you can click them, you can learn more about FNAF, and look at the old theories that we had that were right and wrong. We have both of them. Number 9, Roxy's Raceway. Roxy's Raceway is definitely a place I'd like to visit. I personally think it is one of the most terrifying locations in all of the games. But definitely in terms of Security Breach. I think it's just because of that disturbing encounter that we have with Roxy and the fact that you kind of like need to remove her head in order to continue on your journey to upgrading Freddy, because you need her eyes. I don't know. I just think Roxy is one of the scariest animatronics from the Mega Pizzaplex. Well, maybe after Monty. The two could really be tied when you think about it, for me. I mean, Monty has, you know, kind of that rage, but Roxy, I don't know if she has a really creepy voice to me. I'm not really sure what it is. She just creeps me out. Is it just me that thinks she has a creepy voice, or anyone else feeling that? I also feel like she's faster than the other animatronics, though I know that's probably not true. They're probably all the same speed. I think she just makes me want to run away more, you know what I mean? And that's not saying that she isn't without reason to love for those Roxy fans among you out there, but at the end of the day, she is still an animatronic who could kill you, and you know, for that reason, her and her raceway are still terrifying to me. Number 8, West Arcade. Possibly the most terrifying sequence in Security Breach has to be the West Arcade, and I think that's an area from that game we'd all like to see brought to life in the films at some point. I'm saying films because I'm already assuming that Five Nights at Freddy's will be a smash hit, a box office success, and will turn into not just a successful game and book franchise, but also into a successful film franchise as well. I mean, I know eventually we're going to have to see something like the epic sprawl that is the Mega Pizzaplex, and I am here for that, especially if it involves the terrifying feeling we all got when running from DJ Music Man, and later returning to find him weirdly chill and just kinda like DJing afterwards. I mean, it's probably one of the most frightening sequences in this game, and I want to see how they bring this massive animatronic to life and potentially that whole sequence to life, whenever they get around to it, of course. Although, how cool would it be if we got a teaser for the Mega Pizzaplex at the end of the first film? I mean, that'd be pretty cool. We'd kind of be jumping ahead of ourselves, but I'd be fine with it. Also, who says the plot of, the movies has to match the plot of the games? It doesn't have to be the same order or anything.
And it's 7 hanging scientists. The sister location hanging scientists weren't there before they're revealed to us. Okay, we have lights on in those windows. They're trying to show us that Enter is willing and able to kill anyone who gets in his way, but that also means that there were people working there while we were during sister location. And I don't know why they did that, since it was literally filled with deadly animatronics, and the only reason we were there was to put her back together like William somehow asked us to do. But like, why were there others there? I thought the business was shut down. What's going on? Is it still running? Chica's Party World still a thing? I don't know, man, it's weird, okay? But hey, I'm not here to judge how a fictional serial killer runs their fictional business. Actually, yes, I am. That's become the whole point of this channel now. Why would they have showed us these bodies if they also needed us to escape? Wouldn't we have just noped the hell out of there? I would. I don't care what my dad told me to do. If they're like, oh hey, by the way, I've killed 2 people, I'm leaving. And considering how this was called the Mike screenplay when Scott was talking about it on Reddit a couple of years ago, I hope that we get the answers to this question, because it doesn't make sense to me. And it's 6 roaming animatronics. Okay, straight up, the whole roaming animatronics thing from FNAF 1 is such BS, and I can't even fathom why they thought that it would be required. That's not how servos work, okay? But whatever, Fazbear Entertainment, you do you. You can deal with OSHA, especially when they're walking around and you know that they're hostile. Phone guy warns us that they might shove us into a suit if they see us because we look like a naked endoskeleton, which is already BS. Okay, and we know that because they ignore the endo in the storage room. But like, why would you make this a part of their coding? Why would you let them roam around if they're gonna try to shove me in with robot parts? Do they look at every human they see as a naked endo? And if they do, then how are people actually showing up and not leaving in body bags, okay? God, it's only the first game. Like, for f***'s sake, people. You can't just like try and be a normal company for once, or maybe even just like have like the slightest hint about why anyone would be cool with this, okay? Or maybe why nobody ever reported Fazbear Inc. to like the labor board or something, even if it's like just an explanation that they got tried to but got killed before they could. Come on, put it in the movie, please.
5. FNAF 5. The 5th FNAF game is probably my favorite game of them all, so this is one that I would love to see brought to life. I think it has one of the best narratives and is one of the games with the best sense of atmosphere, making it perfect for a horror film. It's easier to follow from a narrative sense, but still creepy as all heck. However, as I said previously, I'm not sure if this is where we'll be going, considering most people think the first game is the one we'll be following along more closely with, which, to be honest, fair. However, that being said, I still think the 5th FNAF game would make the best inspiration, especially in regards to the overall feeling of the film. At the very least, I hope the film takes inspiration from us having to navigate vents with animatronics in them. That seems like it would be a great takeaway from FNAF 5 to incorporate into the games. Cramped spaces in general are terrifying, never mind a cramped space where there might be something lurking in the darkness waiting to get you. Number 4, sister location. This time around, I just want to talk about the specific location that we know as the sister location, Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. I'm really hoping that we at least allude to this location if it doesn't just get like fully shown in the film. I really would love for us to have some kind of cliffhanger ending for the movie where this is the location we see at the end and it's actually shown to be deep underneath the restaurant. I know this goes kind of against some of the lore from the games in regards to what we know of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, but I really think it could be a cool moment for us to showcase. At some point, I think this is a place that needs to be created for a live action project, so I'm really really hoping we get that sooner rather than later, because we've already waited a really long time. Also, I just really love the idea of Circus Baby as an antagonist, and the idea that she might even appear in the film or somehow be connected to the plot would be really cool to me. However, she is intrinsically tied to the sister location in the games, so we can't really have Circus Baby without either Circus Baby's Pizza World or Circus Baby's entertainment and rental. Number 3. Vents. The vents are a place you definitely don't want to end up, nor do you want them to even exist in a FNAF game, really. I mean, they're the place that either animatronics come out of, or that you need to sneak through, or even worse, both of those things at the same time. So I mean, yeah. But at the same time, when it comes to a film where nothing can harm you, because you're just watching the film, you're not even interacting in the same way like you do in a video game, you definitely need the vents to be an integral part of the movie and how characters move around, whether they be animatronics or simply people trying to survive the night. Never mind he's in the walls. My god, he's in the vents! Is something we should all be screaming after coming out of this movie. Number 2. The end? One of my personal biggest theories for this movie is that it is going to end on a cliffhanger. I anticipate that this may even be followed by a mid-credits or an post-credits scene, like we now see with so many franchises that people build or are trying to build, primarily with superhero movies, but yeah, this is like become a franchise thing now. I can't imagine that they will leave us with a fully complete story, because I think they'll want to leave it open to potentially continue said story elsewhere at a later time, should the movie do as well as many are anticipating. Of course, it also depends. I mean, you can have a complete story without a cliffhanger ending and still have it roll into a multi-film franchise. Just look at other successful horror film franchises like Scream, Final Destination, and Hellraiser, all of which kind of felt like complete packages but then continued on. Okay, so Final Destination kind of left it open for a sequel, but it still felt like a kind of a complete loop. It could have ended with the first film, but it definitely did not. FNAF could go the same way, but I feel like a more the killer is still out there ending is more likely all in all, just based on what we know from the games and even from the books. Number 1. The big bucks. Personally, I think that this film won't just be a single film. It will be an entire film franchise. How could it not be? FNAF is so popular and is already massive when it comes to the dollars that it rakes in, and the film, or hopefully films, could simply be the next level for the franchise, especially in terms of those dollar bills. It could help the much loved initially indie franchise reach an entire new audience, expanding its fan base. My theory here is not scary necessarily for fans, but is scary in the sense that it could lead to a ton more horror film content building up the entire FNAF CU, or the FCU, the Five Nights at Freddy's cinematic universe, or just Freddy's cinematic universe if you prefer. I believe that the first FNAF film will set up a whole series of other films which will follow in the franchise, or potentially even spin off into like TV series. Like, there's a lot of stuff we could do here. And personally, I'm here for that. I hope this film sets up others, and I hope it does well at the box office and in terms of the fans and critics' opinions, so that it can continue to build on the lore and the franchise we've all already honestly fallen in love with.
In at 10, Henry Emily. Oh, come on, okay? Like, yeah, we want to see Henry in the movie, but it's also kind of required, in my opinion. He's like a main stake. And come on, William, did you really think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he was already suspecting something, okay? He took extra care to protect her, and then she still died. That's gonna be a vengeful father if I have ever heard of one. Okay, and at that point, he added protection onto her, and that was vengeful. And he didn't even need vengeance yet. So then, he's after you because you killed his daughter. So why didn't you kill him next? Alright? I don't know. Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops were already suspicious of you, but as long as they can't find a body, you'll be clear again. And they won't put you away for the 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well. Okay, without a body, there's no forensic evidence. So yeah, just finally off Henry, and you would be able to stay yourself, or even just this spring trap. Which, if you were spring lock when you killed him, it would be a whole other thing, because it's not like they're gonna put a robot spring lock suit on trial. And I want him to be in the movie specifically so that it can be explained why he didn't kill Henry, basically. And in a 9, Springtrap. Speaking of Springtrap, I saw multiple tweets saying that the FNAF movie was going to be about the first 3 games in the series, which didn't really seem logical to me, because why would you try and cram 3 games of story and nearly 40 years of lore into one movie. We all know that too many villains usually does not go over well, Spider-Man 3. And while Fazbear's Fright might have actually opened in 2023, which makes the timing perfect for that, we weren't really sure if it was true, until an Instagram user in a now deleted post shared photos of their tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which is the company making the animatronics for the movies, which the post included multiple Springtrap hens, indicating that they're definitely planning on having him appear. And considering all the other information, it basically confirms Springtrap to be in the movie, which I think we were all expecting, but it's still nice to know. Probably towards the end if they're doing it linearly, but they could be jumping around a bit depending on how they want to present the plot, and if Oscar's involved with a time-traveling ball pit. And at 8, Vanny. One of the interesting things about the casting is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Weirdly enough, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list, despite the Vanessa that we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s. That's what I was talking about in the intro when I said characters being cast that couldn't even be born yet. And considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which most likely takes place post 2023, yeah, it couldn't really be the same Vanessa from Security Breach unless this is a robot-human situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film who ironically enough is played by Elizabeth Lail. I don't know if that's intentional, because, you know, there's the theory that Vanessa or Vanny is an adult Elizabeth robot, and that the Ruined DLC girl is a younger Elizabeth robot. But if that theory is true, then we could technically be seeing Vanny in the FNAF movie, even if she hasn't become Vanny yet. Vanessa also being a robot Elizabeth adult would kind of explain how Glitchtrap infected her, rather than just driving her nuts like it did to Jeremy before.
Number 7, Help Wanted. While we expect Easter eggs to pretty much be everywhere in this film, including those pertaining to Help Wanted, I would even take this game's involvement in the film a step further. What if the twist is that this movie is actually the meta twist of Help Wanted, a movie that was helped to made turn a profit based on the sad, real incidents of the real Freddy Fazbear's? What if at the end we learn this film is actually a film of what really happened? You know, we get like a director cut and then we're like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And then it's basically just like kind of a dramatic reenactment that will be explored more via the real characters interacting with those that played them in the film in terms of the sequel. So like, we'll get the real story and then we'll have the dramatized story. Kind of like what we saw with American Horror Story's Roanoke season. I mean, that would be quite the twist. I definitely would not be expecting that. It might be a little too twisty, but could be a thing. Just because, you know, Help Wanted still is so mind-boggling that exists. Number 6, Michael's true origin. What if Michael himself is revealed to be an animatronic? That would be quite the twist, and is definitely something we've on and off theorized here on Top 10 Gaming. I mean, there are lots of questions left unanswered when it comes to Michael and his connection to William and his upbringing as a result of, you know, being William's son. I wonder if we'll find out that Michael wasn't actually the son of William, like in the traditional sense, but instead was a creation that William made for him and his partner to raise, and so it was kind of like his, I guess, animatronic son. Or perhaps Michael is a humanoid animatronic made to replace William and his partner's son who actually passed away. There are lots of ways this could make sense, but it would also be pretty shocking if the movie decided to go in this direction. However, I mean, it could. Anything's possible.
Halfway through into number 5, Ghost Kids. As I mentioned earlier, the Ghost Kids have been cast for the FNAF movie, or at least it appears as if the 5 Ghost Kids have been cast, but only 2 have been made official. Josephine Love is listed as Ghost Kid number 5, and David Houston Doughty is listed as Ghost Kid number 3, which implies that there are still number 1, 2, and 4. There are still a couple of unknowns at the moment as well, characters that don't have a name, or actors that don't have a character name. Grant Feely still hasn't had a character name been officially added, and there are also a couple of characters with names that we're not familiar with. Garrett, Abby, and Max. These are all characters who don't really have in-game equivalents, and currently it's suspected that Garrett is Crying Child, Abby could be Elizabeth, and the newly cast Hank could be Henry Emily, meaning that Abby could instead be Charlie. But there's a lot that we are unclear about, but as it pertains to the Ghost Kids, number 5 seems to be Susie, and then Gabriel, Fritz, and Jeremy, and Gabriel, Fritz, and Jeremy could could be played by Grant Feely, Asher Colton Spence, and David Houston Doty. That leaves room for Cassidy. That could also be Abby or Kat Connor Sterling, whose character name is rumored to be Max, but considering the fact that it is rumored, I'm guessing that it could be that it's just a Cassidy that's older than we expected. In it for Vanessa. One of the interesting things about the casting is that someone has been cast as Vanessa. Yeah, interestingly, there is a Vanessa character on the cast list despite the Vanessa we know not being introduced until Security Breach, where she seems to be in her early 20s. And considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6, which takes place after 2023 at least, it can't be the same Vanessa from Security Breach unless this is a robot-human situation like in the novels. But nevertheless, there is a Vanessa in this film, who, ironically enough, is played by Elizabeth Lail. I don't know if that's intentional, because there is a theory that Vanessa, or Vanny, was an adult Elizabeth robot, and that the Ruined DLC girl is a younger Elizabeth robot. But damn, okay, if that's not ironic, I don't know what is. Also, fun fact, I know Elizabeth Lail from playing Frozen's Anna in Once Upon a Time on ABC. Yeah, Anna to psychopathic serial killer bunny. What an arc. Getting close to the end, into number 3, sequels. Thanks to an interview with Matthew Lillard, who plays William Afton in the movie, we know that he signed a 3-picture deal with Blumhouse in regards to the Five Nights at Freddy's movies. So it's very possible that we get upwards of 2 sequels at least, which also makes sense if you look at it in other ways too. From a film production and marketing standpoint, trilogies have been a staple of various franchises for decades. The Star Wars movies came out in trilogies, Divergent, the Marvel heroes all get their own trilogies, not including team-ups, Christopher Nolan's Batman, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the list goes on. So, a trilogy of FNAF movies wouldn't be out of the ordinary, especially if the first one does well. I mean, if Sonic can get a sequel, I'm sure that FNAF will. And there's also the point that from what I've been seeing, it's possible that this movie is going to be including the first 3 games in the series, which would make sense if we're trying to base the trilogy off the 9 full games that have been released thus far. And considering how there's been a leak of someone who took a tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop and saw Springtrap heads, I think that this has more weight to it. And the FNAF novels, which I'm sure also had an influence over the story of the films, are also a trilogy. So honestly, I think that this will do well enough that they're definitely going to get a trilogy out of it. And you know what, Jason Blum may even find the film so fun that he'd let another 2 happen even if they didn't do great, but I feel like they're gonna make a profit. But ultimately, in number 2, movie date. The movie is about the first 3 games thing also makes sense when looking at the date the film is set in. While there have been no official announcements, I mean, we know that the big moments establishing the plot of the games take place in the 80s. With Crying Child, Elizabeth, and Charlotte all biting it in 1983. In Crying Child's case, though, quite literally. And then the Missing Children's incident takes place in 1985, and we can't forget that infamous bite of 87. FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, FNAF 2 in 87, and FNAF 3 would take place this year, 2023, since the description says 30 years after Freddy's closes, which would have to be the FNAF 1 location in 1993. So they already have 2023 cars, okay? However, there was a casting call of sorts on Central Casting that asked for cars from the late 70s to 90s, which makes sense for the time frame of the first 2 games, as well as the other important establishing moments. Cause I don't know about you, but having Crying Child being rushed to the hospital in a 2019 Toyota Corolla kinda be weird in my eyes. If only they had asked for a 67 Impala. That's a reference that no one's gonna get on this channel. And finally, in number 1, Missing Children's Incident. The Missing Children's Incident is the inciting moment for the whole series. Without the Missing Children's Incident, we never have gotten the first game, which means that we're expecting to see something similar in the movie, albeit a little more tame, I'm sure, since it's probably going to be rated PG-13. But we know that there's going to be a 1980s crime scene thanks to a casting call found on Central Casting, searching for both adults and children for this scene. And I mean, out of everything we know in the series, it's most likely an MCI scene rather than a Bite of 87 or Crying Child death scene, since I don't really think that those would be classified as crimes or crime scenes. I don't know. And thanks to the Fazbear Frights books, we know that the Missing Children's incident takes place in 1985. So yeah, that's probably what this is going to be, and I hope that Oscar pops out of a ball pit real quick. And at 10, Crying Child's name. FNAF 4 is one of the most frustrating games in the series, and like, Come on, I mean, ever since it first released, we've been fighting over the events of this game and everything else about it. We've even been fighting about if the game actually happened or if it was all a dream. And while we assume that Lucas Grant's character, this Garrett, is meant to be Crying Child, it could very well not be. However, if it is, it not only solves a name that we've been curious about since 2015, but it also explains Gregory's name in a way, since Gregory and Garrett are fairly similar names, so it would make sense for a robot version of a kid named Garrett to switch his name to Gregory when going rogue. But of course, there's no way to be sure of that name currently. Okay, but it's entirely possible that the FNAF movie casting has already given us Crying Child's name. And no, it's not Norman because of FNAF VR's table model, alright? That was just the default name of the model. Plus, it didn't even get used in the game. In at 9, Chica's Party World. Chica's Party World is a possible location that was mentioned in the source code of many teasers for Sister Location. It had actual, no presence within the game and wasn't confirmed to mean anything, but it's still a question we've been having. Chica's Party World also has a very similar name to the Chica's Party minigame from FNAF 3, but it's in essence just an excuse for why Chica wasn't in FNAF Sister Location. Some people have theorized that Circus Baby's old pizzeria is Chica's Party World, even though there's no evidence to back it up, and it's also theorized that it's possible the characters that would have been in Chica's Party World would have been JJ, Funtime Chica, Lolbit, and Yendo, because they all have a similar style. The springlock suit used on Night 4 in Sister Location has also been theorized to be from Chica's Party World, maybe belonging to Funtime Chica, but there's no evidence to support that other than the mask of the suit being kinda similar to Toy Chica's head from FNAF 2. But the ice cream shop that's been seen in BTS photos of the FNAF movie features Chica's Rainbow from FNAF World as its mascot, which makes me think that this could be Chica's Party World where they have the whole fight in the fountain, and it could be like a prototype Pizzaplex in a way. And it ain't real FNAF. While we might have almost had a real Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with that delivery service that Virtual Dining Concepts was working on with Scott Cawthon that was seemingly cancelled or postponed for the time being, possibly due to the movie. However, to make up for all that being cancelled, we got set photos of the Freddy's location from the FNAF movie, or at least one of the Freddy's locations that would be in the movie, since there could be more than one. But the one that we've had shots of right now is abandoned in the context of the movie because the sign is on the ground and has been kind of removed. It's basically like a skeleton now. We originally got pictures of the facade of the building being built, and then we got to see the actual sign and finally the finished set. But apparently people online were actually also upset with the sign, which I kind of understand but also don't think is fair. Yeah, FNAF is a huge series and they could have a more elaborate design, but this is also just what the Chuck E. Cheese sign looks like but with a FNAF character. So obviously that's what they're going to lean towards. Okay, come on guys. It's like every fake Freddy's that someone has made for a YouTube thumbnail ever, because it's basically just Chuck E. Cheese. It's also since been taken down since they've finished filming with the location, but it's still pretty cool to see. And we finally know what actually the FNAF building would look like. And at 7, Fountain Fight. Leaked set footage, or possibly just set footage depending on your definition of leaked, shows a scene where Mike is punching someone in a fountain. Or at least he was punching the water in the fountain, since the camera angle kind of made the second actor unnecessary. Plus, why would you hold someone underwater to punch them if you don't need to? But nevertheless, we know that there is a fight in a fountain in what is most likely a mall. This probably takes place closer to the beginning of the movie and could be the catalyst for Mike needing to find a new job, which would bring him to Freddy Fazbear's, but that's currently speculation. It's also been reported that apparently this scene is caused by someone tackling Mike into the fountain, or the other way around, with Mike tackling someone into the fountain, while a child also screams for their dad at the same time, which is probably the one that Mike is beating to a pulp. My guess would be that this kid and father were arguing, or that the child wasn't listening, and Mike, due to his previous trauma from the bite of 83, saw this as an attempted kidnapping, which made him spring into action. I'm assuming that this is after 1983, since I don't even think that a mall would hire a teenager as a security guard, and at this point Michael would also have no reason to have this intense of a reaction until after the bite of 83. And at 6, FNAF World reference. In this mall, there were also photos of an ice cream shop, which some people thought was Mike's job before security. However, I think security guard to night guard at Freddy's makes more sense than ice cream shop to security guard to night guard. This isn't like Ant-Man after all. Mike isn't going to be working at Ben & Jerry's and then don a springlock suit to become a superhero. But the name of the ice cream shop is creatively Ice Cream Parties. because, you know, I'm surprised it's not Ice Cream Parlor. And while it could have been a Chica themed joint, it's not, because, you know, copyright within the universe. It's also not in the style of any stores from the Pizzaplex, so it's not going to be taking place there. But it does feature Chica's Magic Rainbow from FNAF World as its mascot. It's not really anything deeper than that. It's just a reference to FNAF World, which honestly I love, okay? Like, out of all the things to reference, FNAF World is probably one of the most interesting things that they could have, since after all, the clues from FNAF 3 on how to get the good ending are put in place because of FNAF World. So it's already a meta game within the FNAF universe, and now it's being referenced in the movie. So maybe this is a bigger detail than we could even consider right now. Yeah, time for the FNAF cinematic universe. Can't wait for the Avengers, which is just Ultimate Custom Night.
Number 5. Michael doesn't know. What is interesting is that while in the games we've always assumed that Michael was aware of his parentage, it's possible that this was actually a mystery to him until later on. Although it's weird we've never really seen this revelation explored, if it did happen in the game continuity, it's not super surprising considering, you know, how much of the story feels like it's mostly left out of the games and basically is only hinted at by small clues and Easter eggs and mostly just exists in our mind, leaving us with some kind of weird trail of breadcrumbs that we need to like make sense of. What if this movie opens with Mike not knowing the truth of his own origins and whose son he really is? William knows and offers Mike a job, and it is through his time working at Freddy's that he basically discovers who his father really is. After all, the name that we are given for Mike in the film is Schmidt, not Afton, which either implies that Mike is going undercover or is distancing himself from the family name because of controversy, or that he simply just does not know what his name really is. And he thinks his name is Schmidt. I don't know. Number 4. The Afton family house. What if in the end Michael returns to his family home and learns the truth of his father's madness, and the extent of it by finding either the nightmare animatronics or maybe sister location? I know there are those of us who would like to see allusions to other games, and this could be a good way to do that by kind of misdirecting us and making us feel that, you know, Michael is safe at the end of this movie, has defeated William, and even, you know, returns to his old home now that he knows his connection to William. However, it is here that he actually discovers the nightmare is not yet over, because he uncovers something. Ooh, spooky. Number 3. Henry Emily's role. I think an interesting and unexpected twist for fans could be found in the introduction of Henry Emily. Now we know Henry was William's partner, and he is generally portrayed in the franchise as being, you know, the more heroic figure in contrast to the villain and antagonist that is William Afton. However, what if this movie flips the script on those roles, and instead we discover that Henry is actually the evil one in the end, who perhaps manipulated William and used him as a scapegoat? I don't know about you, but I would kind of be down for an alternative redemption arc for William, and perhaps everything was done simply to make William look bad because, I don't know, maybe Henry was holding a grudge against him in relation to their business dealings, or perhaps an accident involving his daughter, which he blames William for. I don't know, I just think this could be a good way to make sense of, you know, some of this tangled web of lore we found ourselves in, where a lot of the stuff with William doesn't quite add up and make sense entirely. While things being cryptic in the games really does work because it allows us to kind of like fill in the gaps and solve a puzzle, in the film we're probably going to need more of a solid and clear path for the story and motivations of its characters, so this could help give us that. Number 2. Mike is the killer. What if everything we know gets turned on its head and it is Michael, not William, that ends up the killer? After all, this is a completely new continuity, so anything is possible. I would actually kind of welcome a twist like this as long as we were given some kind of, you know, plausible motivation for why or how it went this way. There's one little thing this film has to do for me, and that is simply to give me a motivation for why all the bloodshed happened in the first place. That's all I want. If it can do that, no matter what else I'm given, I will leave the theater happy. I promise. Number 1. No twist. This would be a sad reality if this was the twist we got, that there simply, you know, wasn't one at all. I mean, I feel like I would be very surprised if this happened, and it would also likely mean, I think, that the movie wasn't good overall, which is kind of scary. I don't want to live in that reality. I mean, I don't see how you can do Freddy's without having some kind of twist or mystery that leaves us all kind of like in shock and thinking about things after the film is over. This has become so much a part of my expectation that it would be more shocking to not have a twist. Number 10. Stitch Wraith. This is a character who has appeared in the books exclusively. When Security Breach was slated for release, we all wondered if this would be the first game that the Stitch Wraith would appear in, if they would be given some kind of greater meaning beyond just being in the books. But alas, they did not appear. So sad. No Stitch Wraith for us. They weren't even hinted at in the game. But maybe this is the project where the Stitch Wraith will finally earn some kind of greater place in the lore. Maybe the film won't just focus on the games, but actually also deviate a little bit into the books as well, and we can see the Stitch Wraith introduced as an antagonist and perhaps even linked back to William and the Aftons in some way. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, and if you love when we talk FNAF, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button, and don't miss out on any other FNAF content we got coming your way. After all, this movie will come out at some point, and then we're gonna have so much to talk about. You're gonna want to be here for that. Number 9. It was matpat all along. This one is actually kind of adorable, but would also be terrifying for what it could mean for the lore by giving us a super meta twist of an ending during the finale of this film. Of course, it comes from the game theory subreddit, Game Theorists. Here, someone suggested an ending where the whole story is just revealed to be a theory, and in the end, matpat is seen busting through the screen, proudly adding, "A game theory." Honestly, this would be kind of brilliant, but making this make sense with the rest of the lore, that would be next to impossible and kind of terrifying. Even for matpat, I'm sure. And therein lies the fear factor. Still, I think one of my favorite things about this theory is that a fan, Redditor Quickstack, added in the comments a FNAF 6 speech ending that was actually inspired by this theory. It starts, "Connection terminated. I'm sorry to interrupt you, matpat, if you still even remember that name. But I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to lore, nor have you been called here by the individual you assume, although you have indeed been called. You have all been called here into a labyrinth of boxes and balloon boys, misdirection and misfortune, a labyrinth with no exit, a maze with no prize. You don't even realize that you are going insane. Your lust for lore has driven you in endless circles, chasing the final timeline theory in some unseen detail, always seeming so near, yet somehow out of reach. But you will never find them." So great. Seriously, do yourself a favor and read the comment in its entirety over on the subreddit post. That's not the whole speech, but it's a little taste. It's so good. I love that. Number 8, the Bite of 87. What if the Bite of 87 wasn't who we thought it was at all? What if it somehow wasn't even an animatronic? Is that possible? Or it was an animatronic who wasn't even supposed to be at the restaurant at that time. There's so little that we know when it comes to the Bite of 87 that I'm willing to bet anything is possible when it comes to how twisty this could get. One theory that I had in relation to this potentially appearing in the movie is that it could be the lead-in to connect us to a sequel. Now, maybe it was a nightmare animatronic or a funtime animatronic that was actually responsible, which will only be revealed in a post-credits cutscene, and it will be this that will basically hint at what the next movie could be about and which game we'll kind of be exploring next. I could also see them going to something more recent and ending the movie with some kind of mega Pizzaplex tease, with maybe even some kind of, like, I don't know, janky early model of Monty being the one responsible here.
And it's 7 Monty. Okay, now, originally, we thought that this movie was going to be the first game, like the first movie. But then, like I said, I saw tweets saying that it was going to be the first 3. But then, after we got the tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop with the photos of Springtrap's head, it kind of became clear that Springtrap's going to be in the movie. However, it's also worth noting that there is another head in the background of the last image of that post's collage that seems to be extremely similar to Monty after he's been broken in Security Breach. But considering how, again, Security Breach takes place decades after FNAF 3. It's unlikely that he'll appear in this movie, but maybe in the third one that they have planned, considering how Matthew Lillard signed a contract for 3 films. So, I don't know, maybe they're already working on the other props. This could also just simply be a remaining thing from another project, because Jim Henson's has worked with, like, reptile exhibits and stuff in zoos, so could just be that. And at 6, Foxy. Fritz is one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic, Foxy. Foxy. I guess in a way it was kind of meant to be, given that both of their names start with F and are shorter than the other names of their groups, and the others actually have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters too, and like, come on, that's freaking weird, man. But after that, not much else is known about Fritz. There originally was a theory that Fritz and Foxy were a good guy who actually wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Custom Night after an April Fool's update where Foxy's mechanics were changed to instead block one of the doors instead of just kill you. It was proven to be a joke feature since the other mechanics that were changed in this update had Phone Guy and Springtrap being connected, referencing the Phone Guy's Purple Guy theory, and Dream Theory, which again we now know is not true. But considering how Asher Colton Spence has been officially cast in the movie, I think that kid looks like a Fritz. Alright? Orange hair, for the most orange of the animatronics, it makes sense to me. Okay? Tell me that kid doesn't look like a Fritz. He certainly looks more like a Fritz than a Gabriel or a Jeremy. Just saying.
Number 5, Backstage. Backstage is one of the creepiest areas in that first game for me. It's an area where the animatronics and animatronic parts are held. If the animatronics break down during the day, this is one of the areas where employees could come to sort of fix them up. In fact, the door to the room even reads, employees only. The backstage is an interesting area as well. It serves a similar purpose to what we consider to be the back rooms in some locations, allowing for repairs. I've always thought of it as more of a storage area, kind of like, you know, like a little green room for animatronics where minor repairs happen and where employees can come to check on the animatronics and make little modifications to them if they have a small glitch, and, you know, make sure they're there for when the show starts, because I imagine the backstage area leads to the stage because it's the backstage. But the back rooms I've always thought of as more of Afton's hidden away private area where more in-depth repairs would take place and where unspeakable horrors would happen. Now that being said, the backstage area is still pretty creepy on its own, especially in FNAF 1 when animatronics can kind of just like begin to move around in there and then pop up in front of the camera, like, yikes. Number 4, back rooms. The back rooms. I mean, obviously with William Afton being the central antagonist, presumably, of the film, I think we are all still hoping to see the back rooms in some capacity. The back rooms are extremely important to the lore of FNAF. This is the place where William supposedly took his victims, where he ended many of their lives, and also hid their bodies by stuffing them inside animatronic suits. Not only that, but the back rooms are also where William Afton met his untimely end. They are super important to the story of William Afton, that's for sure. And they're where many unspeakable things seem to have happened. I guess I should have said one of his untimely ends, because, you know, William Afton has had many untimely ends, but I digress. This is also probably one of the spookiest areas in the games. Phone Guy alludes to this area, and it seems as though he also meets his untimely end there as well, based on the recordings that we hear. Number 3, Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. Sister Location is obviously one of my favorite locations among the 5 Nights at Freddy's franchise. It's one of my favorite games. It's just, I don't know, it's one of the creepiest ones for me, and I also like how we don't really know whose side some of the animatronics are on or who we can trust here. Can we trust anyone? There's more of a sense of isolation as well from the real world that I think is really eerie, because, you know, we kind of have to like go down an elevator to even get there, and then we gotta crawl around in the vents to even get in. While I don't expect this location to appear fully in the first 5 Nights at Freddy's film, I do think it is a location that could be alluded to or simply hinted at. I wouldn't be surprised if the sister location ended up being an Easter egg. I just think that Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental is one of those locations where it's very easy to feel a horror movie could be set there. The whole sister location game feels the most like a horror movie plot to me. A workplace where things go from weird to weirder, where there are secrets around every corner, you don't really know who to trust, and where everyday situations are overshadowed by a sense of dread. Menial tasks, or seemingly menial tasks, become life or death, and yet you keep being pulled, being called back to this place for some reason. This holding center for animatronics that feels inescapable, both for the protagonist and seemingly for the antagonists themselves. I love haunted house films, and the sister location, while very different, kind of gives off those vibes to me. Number 2, Scooping Room. Possibly one of the most terrifying places in all of the games to have ever appeared, and I would say even in like all of the books. This place is pretty creepy. The Scooping Room is in essence the place where we go when we realize, uh-oh, it's too late, we've made a mistake. Well, at least you know that fateful final time, depending on the decisions that you make in Sister Location. Honestly though, even the first time, it's a pretty terrifying place to be at. I genuinely think this location could appear in the movie, despite the fact that it's actually from another location entirely that, as I said previously, I don't really seriously think will be featured in the first Freddy's film. If we're going to what I assume will be a traditional Freddy's, and perhaps even getting an origin story of it, this specific location could still be featured as kind of like a Frankenstein added in element to the Freddy's that we're gonna see. After all, the Scooping Room is kind of presented to us as a repair room, a place where malfunctioning animatronics get scooped out and then, ideally, rebuilt. I feel like the threat of this room is simply too great for it to not be included in the film, or at least in some way, alluded to. Even if none of our main characters have to face the perils of the Scooping Room in the first film, there are others who can meet their end here, or perhaps we could just have the room alluded to and established for future follow-up films. A little, teaser of things to come. Things to be scooped. Number 1, the vents. The vents are probably one of the most terrifying places in general among any of the games. At least any of the games where, vents are involved. Whether that means you get to crawl through them or they simply are used by animatronics who are attempting to get to you. Either way you slice it, vents are pretty dangerous. Either there is someone coming out of them to mess with you like Balloon Boy, or kill you like, any other animatronic really pretty much that uses the vents, or you are attempting to crawl through them yourself while avoiding other animatronics that might be in them with you. Anyways, I hope there is at least a moment where someone or something uses the vents in the film, a la he's in the walls, but instead, they're in the vents, or like, oh no, we have to go in this vent. Oh, vents, they're creepy. I would never crawl through a vent myself.
In a 10 arrest made. One comment that's always stuck out to me was about a newspaper clipping from FNAF 1. That clipping says that the killer was convicted for the murders of the missing children, which doesn't really make sense, given that, Afton's out and about in literally every other game. Unless Henry was falsely convicted, but since they couldn't find the bodies, maybe he got out of prison when Fazbear Frights happened. It explains why he wasn't involved in the first few games, to our knowledge at least, but I will say that I have heard a lot of different information and ideas concerning the missing children's incident, so can't exactly be sure what's going on. But honestly, Henry being falsely imprisoned for that incident would explain a lot. And considering how there are no bodies, there might not be much forensic evidence, so the case would rely on circumstantial, and it could have dragged on for a while, depending on how dedicated the state was to prosecuting him. Until 1993, when Fazbear Frights opened. Look, okay, 30 years is a long time for new information to come to light, and I originally thought that we would have to ignore that newspaper, but maybe the movie can explain what happened. Or even it just starts with Henry getting arrested. And at 9, Golden Freddy. While I may believe that Golden Freddy is merely a hallucination that Michael sees while being possessed by his younger brother, many believe that Crying Child possesses Golden Freddy. Some even think that Crying Child and Cassidy share the animatronic, which would be impossible if Cassidy is supposed to be possessing William, and given everything we know about possession in the games, that just kind of negates the other possibility. But if you believe that Golden Freddy is a physical animatronic possessed by Crying Child, you'll find out in the movie, because if there's no physical one, then I feel like it's kind of confirmed, alright? Plus, I don't think that Crying Child would attack his brother. If we want to say that Crying Child wouldn't be angry at his father, then I don't know why he would be mad at his brother for, assuming that an animatronic won't crush his skull, because it makes sense, and especially not after all this time, because remember, FNAF 1 takes place in 1993, 10 years after his death. And at this point, Michael would have gone through Sister Location, so, his insides would be all jumbled, he would be purple, and he would also kind of have the remnant of his sister on him still, so Crying Child would be like, oh, okay, so you have suffered. Who knows, okay? Either way, Golden Freddy is such a weird animatronic that never really has a proper explanation. They crash us, he never gets a hold of us, we're not clearly dead because of him, so I just hope that they explain him in the movie, okay? Because it seems to be a pretty core premise of the series, so if they don't explain it, then I'm just gonna assume that I was right. And it ate spring lock suit legality. Okay, the spring lock suits themselves are such a massive occupational hazard that Fazbear did not need to create. These things are hella deadly, and both William and Henry just allow for the employees to wear them. I get William doing it because he's a sociopath who doesn't care about anyone, but come on. Dude, Henry, you're supposed to be better. Make a separate suit for the animatronic character that's just a suit, so the employees who run your business and make you money don't end up dying from having their bones replaced with animatronic robot parts. I don't need servos in with my guts. Okay, I need that my guts are supposed to be there. I'm sure it would be like a hell of a lot cheaper to make a suit too, instead of having all this complex machinery that you gotta crank. What's your deal here, man? Why did either of you think that was a good idea? And particularly Henry, okay? Please explain the justification behind this in the movie. I gots to know. I am filming this on Desperation Day, by the way. I Met Your Mother joke.
Number 7, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. This is the main location featured in the first 5 Nights at Freddy's games, and also the one that I think many of us are expecting to see in the movies. Honestly, it would make sense. The first game started with this location, so you would think that the first movie would follow suit. Just seems like a logical place to start, you know, at the beginning. Although as we later learned, this isn't quite the beginning of the FNAF story, since prior incidents which are explored in games that were released after the first one explain more of how Freddy's came to be and the origin story of the location and somewhat of its creators, William Afton and Henry Emily. Still, this is where it all started with that first game, so I have to assume we'll be seeing this location come to life first. Although when the movie takes place in regards to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza's history, it should be a very interesting revelation for us. The first game takes place when this location has mostly fallen into disrepair, neglect, and is likely less popular than it once was, due to all the negative press surrounding it. It also seems to take place at a time when obviously William Afton isn't really there, and we know William Afton's in this movie, so I don't know. Seeing the location at the height of its popularity instead would be pretty interesting. Number 6, Pirate Cove. Pirate Cove is a scary area, I suppose, but mainly I just want to see what is behind the curtain. Have we ever seen that? I don't think we've ever seen that. If we've ever seen that somewhere, let me know, because I want to see that. Also, Foxy is there, so you know I want Pirate Cove to be in the film because it means we'll likely get to see one of my all-time favorite animatronics, classic Foxy. I love Foxy, and after Security Breach, while I love Monty and Roxy as animatronic additions, I gotta say I still miss Foxy and Bonnie. Sorry Bonnie, you're great too. Pirate Cove is only ever seen in the games from the outside. We see closed purple curtains decorated with stars that are firmly closed. When Foxy begins to emerge, if you don't check on him often enough, we then see his hooked hand appear and he'll peek out at us on the camera before eventually sprinting towards the office to accost the player. Or as many once theorized, to check on you and give you a big hug, because Foxy for a while was believed to be the only nice animatronic really that we had. Of course, that was all debunked, but us Foxy fans can still dream of one day befriending this pirate fox.
Halfway through into number 5, Golden Freddy. Since the beginning of FNAF, the dawn of time it seems, we have been wondering about the mysterious and seemingly supernatural entity of Golden Freddy. This entity that's able to travel through solid doors and walls, who causes us to have hallucinations and crashes our game when they kill us. Who was this mysterious being? Over the years we've gotten a few names, most notably with the gravestone ending in FNAF 6, but even with that ending, Golden Freddy's name had always eluded us. And if they are the one you should not have killed, or even if they aren't, the name wasn't given to us in Ultimate Custom Night either, only an alias. But alas, we were finally saved in this one thing. Everything else got messed up, but we were finally saved when the survival logbook came out, where after jumping through more hoops than poodles at a dog show or dolphins at SeaWorld when they just want food, we uncovered the name of Cassidy, thanks to wrong numbers on various pages somehow becoming coordinates in the goddamn word search. It was a lot for a name reveal that honestly didn't really mean much to the series, since the name Cassidy only appears in one other place, and that was the novel, The Fourth Closet, and the character is of little consequence otherwise. And considering how Scott scrapped a Cassidy screenplay, I doubt they're gonna have much significance in the movie, but I still want to see Golden Freddy. It's an iconic thing. In it for Vlad. Now, I know at least the vast majority of comments seem to think that the Immortal and the Restless series is like a linchpin in FNAF that proves that Afton killed his wife and what her name is supposed to be, but that's still highly unlikely. The Immortal and the Restless has never popped up again after Sister Location, and if it was important, it would've. There has never been another instance of that show having any significance other than just being something we turned on to watch after work in Sister Location. It didn't reveal the mother's name, it didn't reveal that Afton never wanted a son, because if that was the case, he would never have wanted Crying Child, so why would he have sworn to put him back together? And if he didn't want Michael, why would he have sent him down to get Elizabeth? It just doesn't make sense, okay? The Immortal and the Restless is something that shows up less often in the series than the name Jeremy, and we don't think that that name has any additional significance. Plus, I don't know about you, but I watch The Flash, and I can't run at super speed, so yeah, it doesn't reflect your personal life. So basically, I want the show to appear on a TV in one scene so that we can see Vlad, and I don't know, maybe have like someone at a Comic-Con sign like the voice actor for Vlad at a Comic-Con. That'd be funny. I want to see that. That's the version. Getting close to the end, into number 3, Mangle. I'm gonna be straight with you. You're gonna be mad, but I'm gonna say it. We don't know who caused the bite of 87 still, or in reality, who the bite of 87 was actually on. I mean, we have theories about it. We have the theory that it was Mangle, or that it was Freddy, or maybe Chica that bit Jeremy, but theories do not equal fact. This incident has been on our minds since the first game, and we haven't been able to come up with a definitive and confirmed answer. So yeah, I want this to happen. If you ask me, that's almost certainly something that needs to be explained. It's been 8 years, and we still haven't gotten an actual direct answer. And if anything, we've gotten conflicting answers. Originally, we thought it was Mangle, but then the handprint on Freddy's face seemed to kind of indicate that it was him. And then in Ultimate Custom Night, we got the line of "Where's my beak?" lodged in your forehead, of course, which made us think that it could have been Toy Chica, but we have no real answer, despite what I know you've already written in the comments. Yeah, I know that you're all angry, okay? You're all typing out and yelling at me, but come on, okay? It's not confirmed and it's not canon. Unless Scott clearly says that Mangle caused the bite, all we have is theories. So, I'm desperately hoping that Mangle shows up in the movie so that we can have it explained. Please! For the love of God, especially if it's going to have the first 3 games and FNAF 2 has Mangle in it, so just do it, please. And ultimately, in at number 2, Circus Baby. Hello and welcome to Miss Mojo. Today we're counting down the top 10 worst anime betrayals, but it's FNAF. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single goddamn time. Maybe next time I'll say top 10 anime. In Sister Location, we thought that we finally had the first actually decent animatronic, someone that was trying to help us, like a prototype glam rock Freddy. But that wasn't true, alright? Baby was giving us tips on how to survive, she was helping us get through Bellora's gallery, she really seemed like she wanted us to live. But then, what do we get for trusting her? Scooped and stuffed, like we were just the family pet turkey around Thanksgiving. It was probably one of the most brutal things to happen to a character in the entire series, and it's all because we trusted Baby. She made us feel safe, she gave us confidence, prevented us from getting killed, only to use our body as a skin suit, then get kicked out of Entered not even a game later. God, almost as bad as my ex. This is why I don't trust Glamrock Freddy though, alright? Baby is legit one of the reasons that I have trust issues, and that's saying something. And finally, in at number 1, the Puppet. The Puppet is an animatronic puppet and a major antagonist, but also a good guy in a way in the FNAF series. They first appeared as the seemingly kind of like implied main antagonist of FNAF 2, but in the later games, they were showing the heroic side. It was like a Regina from Once Upon a Time arc. It serves as the prize vendor of the newly refurbished Freddy Fazbear's of 1987, and it's actually implied that they were originally from Fredbear's Family Diner, or at least its inspiration was. After the pizzeria was only open for a few short weeks, it was forced to close down, but the puppet, unlike the other toy animatronics who were scrapped due to possible malfunctions, was not scrapped, later appearing in the newer pizzeria from the first game, as evident by the dream cutscenes, from Sister Location, and appearing as Lefty in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. Lefty was an animatronic that was intended to capture the puppet, and it's actually an acronym because it was possessed by Charlotte, and Henry, who was her father, wanted to capture the soul so that he could then release her. But overall, the puppet has significance to the story, and plus, have you seen the way that it walks around in FNAF 2 VR before it jump scares you? That creepy as hell. That needs to be in the movie. In a 10, Game Theorist Cop. Now, in another video, I said that YouTubers were invited to take a look at the set, but MatPat wasn't one of them. And game theory is such a huge influence on the game's success that it really deserves its own mention. Something more than like a possible FNAF video game cameo montage a la Free Guy, but I think that the show of game theory specifically should have its own like reference or character, as maybe even like a crime podcast or online conspiracy website trying to sort out the mysteries of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. I don't know, I think that might be one of the better ways that they can incorporate it, or maybe there's just an investigating detective that's named Matthew or is played by MatPat. I don't know, I just think that like a little extra nod to the guy that really made the majority of us aware of the series is definitely deserved, if not required, especially by the fans. I wouldn't have known about FNAF if it wasn't for MatPat choosing it over Slenderman because of a poll, so yeah. But he also said that he didn't have an idea for what that Slenderman theory could have been. So maybe he would have just went with FNAF anyway, but I think we can all agree that MatPat deserves at least a reference in the movie. In at 9, Ballora. Some believe that Ballora was intended to be a form of mother figure for the Afton kids once their mother left, or died, or was killed, or whatever happened to her. Maybe she never even existed. This is based off the idea that the mini-Renas and Ballora are basically kind of like a family, and that Ballora is a mother to the mini-Renas, and the fact that there would be one for each Afton kid and then another one that's spare. This could just be William having mommy issues, or it could be that there is a secret fourth Afton kid like I've proposed in the past, although I highly doubt it. And if that is the case, maybe Vanessa is supposed to be that kid, hence why she'd be a robot. Or Vanessa just is like the human version of Ballora, so the kids wouldn't freak out because baby can change between human and not human in the books, and yeah. But then again, it could just be Afton wanting to be treated like a kid and have someone to hold him and make the pain go away. I mean, it's definitely not the healthiest option, but it's something Sigmund Freud would be proud of. So yeah, if she is supposed to be a mother to the kids, if she's not in the movie, it's gonna be kinda confusing. And it ain't Markiplier. In a recent interview with Variety, Markiplier was asked about the FNAF movie, and he implied quite heavily that he will be making an appearance, saying, quote, "Everyone wants to know, there was a lot of confusion. Yeah, I can't say anything particular about that. There's a lot of scheduling conflict, and I can't say anything." Which is his way of saying that he's at least making an appearance, because why else would there be scheduling conflicts if he didn't need to have the free time to be in the movie? But within the FNAF community, this man is also a behemoth. Having played through every game, most popular fan games, and then more, people call him the FNAF King. You can't think of FNAF without thinking of this man as well as MatPat, okay? But mostly, that didn't really mean much, and he was just a fan of the series until November 25th, 2019 at 9 AM EST, when a Lumix official released the official launch trailer for FNAF AR Special Delivery on YouTube. In that 2-minute long trailer, we see Markiplier being the one advertising the Fazbear Funtime service, which the game is based off. So, yeah, he's already, like, I don't know what's going on. It's unknown, like, what character he's playing, but in all honesty, Markiplier was already canon in the games, or I guess technically in the game lore, so he might as well be in the movie. Right? And if you guys are looking forward to the FNAF movie and want to know more about it, be sure you hit subscribe, because when we know, you'll know. Or maybe slightly after, because I still have the script. And it's 7, Crying Child. Okay, now this one is certainly going to be controversial, but Crying Child hasn't officially been cast. And I say this every time I bring it up, his death wasn't a Springlock failure, alright? I watched the MatPat timeline recently. He says it was a Springlock failure, but it couldn't have been. The reason I know it wasn't a Springlock failure is because the Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, so no Springlocks would have had the chance of failing. Because the term Springlock failure refers to when the Springlock mechanisms that move robot parts away fail to keep those parts in place, snapping them back into animatronic mode, and then that's when you get filled with all of the metal bits, which is bad if someone's inside. But if you're in a robot mode, there's no spring locks that can fail because they're not being moved. Plus, there's no mechanisms inside the mouth because no parts of the human would be in the mouth. So yeah, the jaw just moves up and down. It would have had to be superpowered in order to crush the skull, something that only William would have been able to integrate, considering how, you know, he made the robots and is the suit technician and stuff. So yeah, I'm hoping Crying Child's in the movie. And while we assume that this Garrett character is meant to be Crying Child, it could very well not be, so I had to say it. Alright, I did. And at 6, Charlotte Emily. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims that Afton has ever had. Being his first direct victim and seemingly second indirect victim, Charlotte gets killed outside of one of the original pizzerias, despite desperate attempts from her father Henry to prevent that, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed like a puppet to protect other kids but then treat her as a priority, which is kind of selfish, especially if you know that your partner is going to be a serial killer, but you know, that's aside the point. However, when it gets trapped in a box and it's unable to actually make it out to Charlotte in time to save her, she ends up getting shanked. So, in another attempt, the puppet tries to save her in a different way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic and thus becoming one in a sense. As the puppet, Charlotte then went on to share her gift of life with the other animatronics, or I guess with the other victims of the original 5, resulting in ultimately William's undoing. But yeah, in a way, Charlotte is really the one he shouldn't have killed, but that's a whole other character. And basically, she needs to be in the movie, and she hasn't been cast, or at least hasn't been named directly. So I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe that's who Abby's supposed to be. Halfway through into number 5, security guard experience. In the mall set, there were photos of the ice cream shop that were released or leaked, whichever one you kind of want to take it as, but some people think that was Mike's job before security. However, I think that mall security to night guard at Freddy's makes more sense than ice cream shop to security guard to night guard. It just seems like a more basic progression, you know? Like, it's not Ant-Man. Mike isn't gonna work at Ben & Jerry's and then don a spring-lock suit and become a superhero fighting crime, okay? The name of the ice cream shop is also Ice Cream Parties, and it could still be a Chica-themed joint, so yeah, it's either that the Pizzaplex is Chica's Party World, or maybe it's just the ice cream shop that's the party world. It's not really anything deeper than that, but yeah, Mike was a security guard before starting at Freddy's, so it actually makes more sense as to why they would have hired Michael, because he actually had security experience. Which also might explain why the higher-ups were apprehensive to making Vanessa a night guard at the Mega Pizzaplex, because, you know, they've had people who had experience before, which would mean that Mike had worked security for a building the size of the Pizzaplex before, which would make sense if he was working security for this one, but yeah. And in 4, missing children. The missing children's incident is the inciting moment for the entire FNAF series. Without the missing children's incident, we never would have gotten the first game, which means that we're expecting to see something similar in the movie, albeit a little more tame, I'm sure, since it's probably going to be rated PG-13. But we know that there is going to be a 1980s crime scene thanks to a casting call found on Central Casting, searching for both adults and children in the scene. And, I mean, like, out of everything we know in the series, it's most likely that the missing children's incident is the scene rather than like a Bite of 87 or a Crying Child death scene. Cause, you know, I don't really think those would be classified as crime scenes, but a guy stabbing people? Yeah, that's more of a crime. And thanks to the Fazbear Frights books, we know that the incident takes place in 1985, and this kind of confirms that. I hope Oscar like pops out of a ball pit real quick though, and just like, yo, what's up? And then like goes back in and does the whole Big Bang Theory thing where he's like, bazinga. Getting close to the end in number 3, multiverse. Thanks to an interview with Matthew Lillard, who plays William Afton in the movie, we know that he actually signed a 3-picture deal with Blumhouse with regards to the FNAF movie series. So, it's very possible that we get upwards of 2 sequels at the very least, which also makes sense if you look at it in like multiple ways. From like a film production and marketing standpoint, trilogies have been a staple of movies for decades. Several franchises always come out with trilogies, like Star Wars, Divergent, the Marvel superheroes all get their own trilogies, not including team-up movies. Christopher Nolan's Batman, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, the list goes on. So yeah, a trilogy of FNAF movies would not be out of the ordinary, especially if the first one does well. Because I mean, like, come on, if Sonic can get a sequel out of everything and over Detective Pikachu, I'm sure FNAF is going to get one. There's also the point that from what I've seen at least, it's possible this movie is going to be the first 3 like I was explaining earlier, which would really make makes sense because then you have 3 movies that are 3 games each for a total of the 9 full games that have been released to this point. Add on to that the Fazbear Fanverse that has now starting to be released a little bit with FNAF Plus. I think FNAF Plus is out at least, or at least it's going to be out soon, and Pop Goes. So yeah, we could have a whole FCU going on, which would be pretty sick considering the recent takes on Marvel movies and how Winnie the Pooh got a horror version now that it's in the public domain. But ultimately, in at number 2, Fired. Leaked on-set footage, or possibly just set footage depending on your definition of leaked, shows a scene where Mike is punching someone in a fountain, or at the very least he was punching the water that was in the fountain since the camera angle didn't really make the second actor necessary. But nevertheless, we know that there is going to be a fight in a fountain in what looks to be most like a mall. This probably takes place closer to the beginning of the movie and probably is the catalyst for Mike needing to find a new job, which would then bring him to Freddy Fazbear's, but that's currently speculation. It's also been reported that this scene is caused by someone tackling Mike into the fountain, or the other way around. I can't really remember which one it was. While a child does scream for their dad or at their dad, which is probably the one that Mike is beating to a pulp. So yeah, my guess is that like this kid and his father were arguing, or that the child wasn't listening and then the dad was getting angry. So Mike, due to his trauma from the bite of 83, saw this as an attempted kidnapping because, you know, trauma and movies, which made him have to react in this way, kind of like he was springing into action. I am assuming that this is also after 1983 because I don't think that even a mall would hire a teenager as a security guard. And also at that point, Michael would have no reason to have this intense of a reaction if he didn't have trauma. So yeah. But this could also explain why Michael is so quick to be fired in the games, and it's because of his temper and odor and whatever, but mostly his temper. And finally, in number 1, Springtrap. Okay, the movie being the first 3 games, I was seeing multiple tweets about it. It didn't really seem all that logical, but then the casting call for Cars in the early 90s kind of made it more believable for me. And then this. Okay, my thought process is like, why would you try to cram 3 games and nearly 40 years of content into a movie? Okay, we saw Spider-Man 3 and we know how that goes. But nevertheless, while Fazbear's Fright might have opened in 2023, which would make that timing perfect, I wasn't entirely convinced until an Instagram user, in a now deleted post, shared photos from their tour of Jim Henson's Creature Shop, which, in classic Funko fashion, leaked multiple things about FNAF, including Springtrap heads, indicating that they're definitely planning on having him appear. And considering how basically everything else confirms Springtrap to be in the movie, he's probably gonna show up towards the end. I don't know, could be jumping around a bit. There was kind of like an alligator looking Monty thing there, but considering how Security Breach takes place after FNAF 6 and is the most recent game, I doubt that it's actually going to appear in this one. But like I said, maybe in the 3rd.